They don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD and Melissa.
Hey guys, welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my wonderful co-host.
I am Melissa. Hello, JD.
Melissa, how are you?
I am super good. Thanks for asking.
We've been super busy today, but I'm glad we are able to get in here and start this podcast. I think we talked to a lot of flippers, buy and hold guys, a ton of multifamily guys, but very few are land specific. So I'm super excited to bring Dan Haberkost on. He is the CEO, founder, leader of Front Range Land, doing a ton of land deals and showing other people how to make money doing land. And I'm super excited to use this as a personal coaching call and figure out what we're doing wrong on some of our land deals. Dan, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks,
we appreciate
Dan.
it.
Yeah, Melissa, JD, thank you. I'm excited to talk through it. Should be fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, usually we like to start out with you just kind of giving us your background. Let us know, or let our listeners know where you came from and how you got into this, and then ultimately what pushed you more toward the land side of things than any of the other trailer parks, storage units. You know, there's so many different niches. Why was land the one that you focused on?
Sure. So quick elevator pitch or story, I guess, would be I actually started managing rentals when I was 16. So I grew up in Ohio, in a rural part of Ohio, about 50 minutes outside of Cleveland. And I managed a farm and then a portfolio of rentals for my boss at the time. And so I started running businesses pretty young. That was the case through high school, ran a landscaping company through college, and came from that very conservative kind of fear-based background that a lot of the rural Midwest is famous for. And so money was a big source of fear, worry, anxiety. And we weren't poor, but we were definitely lower middle class. And anyways, so by the time I was 20-ish in college, finishing up school full-time, work full-time, I was getting frustrated. And I said, I'm not going to do this for my whole life. So I started reading about equities and different businesses to start. And just like everyone else, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that was the light bulb, right? And so ended up buying my first rental when I was 21 while I was still in college. You know, I was working full time, so I was able to qualify and do that. And it was just a duplex house hack. Shortly after, moved out of Ohio to Colorado Springs specifically, bought another house hack out here. And it was around that time that it became apparent to me that if I really wanted to scale an investment portfolio, I needed to figure out how to make a substantial income, right? You hear about all the low and no money down stuff, and that's great. But in the long run, a lot of big expenses are going to pop up when you own rentals. So it's a fairly long story, but met an investor at the local real estate club who had been doing land and development for 40 plus years, and learned from him. And that was really what got me into land. And from that, that's where Front Range Land was born. And so today I have the active business, which is really just an assembly line of land deals coming in at 20 to 50 cents on the dollar, some of which I build on, some of which we just flip for cash, and some of which we sell on terms. And so that creates a pretty solid income stream between the builds, the notes, and then just the flips. And then that feeds the passive investing. So that's where I'm at as of today.
Awesome. I really like that model. It's a similar model to regular wholesalers that are focusing on houses. One of the things that I think a lot of people forget about is with the lots and lands. A lot of people don't see how you can derive passive income from that. But once you turn it in to a note, and you're receiving that monthly check in and whatever down payment you are to hopefully recoup most of 90% of your costs back out. It's a rinse and repeat kind of scenario if you can find the deals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. And with land specifically, it's just so much, so many fewer people are aware of it or really know anything about it. It's much less competitive. I have a buddy who has a wholesaling company and he's been doing it for 7 or 8 years. So his systems are fine tuned. And I think it's $6,000 per contract in marketing. I spend between $200, $250 to get a lot under contract. So it's a much lower barrier to entry. And I just kind of feel like I'm in my own world with not a lot of competition, relatively speaking.
Well, it's not sexy, right? You don't see the big before and after pictures. You don't see that, and a lot of people don't see the value. Now, if you look at it just numbers wise, based off of what you just said, your acquisitions cost is your deal cost. That sounds pretty sexy to me.
Yeah.
It's when you're looking at numbers and stuff like that. So I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to hear a little bit about your process, how you're choosing the areas that you're going through, and then through the marketing, through your offer process, and then ultimately how you decide to do the dispositions and what you're making that decision on. Are you going to build on it? Are you going to subdivide it? Are you going to sell on terms? How you're making those thought process. So if we start at the beginning, I know it'll be a stretch to get it in time, but let's just start there and see what your process looks like. Maybe some of our listeners can pick up some of the key details.
Yeah. So important caveat for anyone that's listening that isn't as far along as I am, I'm going to sound a lot smarter in hindsight, as we all do. There's a lot of input I've got from other people. There's a lot where it's just had to choose something. And so again, we're all just figuring this out as we go along. So another important distinction is the difference between raw land and the stuff that I'm dealing with, which are shovel-ready infill lots. So simple explanation here. Infill lots, somebody has already taken the overarching piece of land. They've done all the work to zone it, bring in utilities, subdivide, go through the local municipality to get all that done, work with the civil engineer. So there is an enormous amount of time and money that has been put into the land already that I'm going after. Whereas, for anyone familiar with Colorado, there's big developers out east that are taking thousands of acres and going through that process of getting the entitlements, bringing in utilities, and so on and so forth. And that can be extremely profitable, but it takes much longer and you're exposed to risk for usually several years. But that can also be a very profitable method of dealing with land. And that's not what I'm doing. My lots are all ready to go. Water and sewer, power in the back. It makes it much easier. So that is what I decided I wanted to stick with right off the bat. And again, that was more just because the guys I knew in the land space, that's what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And so the mentor I was telling you about, he actually lived in one of the markets south of me, about an hour down the highway. And learning from him and just by default doing deals where he was to start really showed me the value of that type of land. So then I looked for similar markets like that one. And really what I was looking for were failed subdivisions from many, many years ago where all that preliminary work had been put in. But for whatever reason, when they initially did the development, it didn't take off. Maybe it got 10 or 15% built out and had been kind of sleepy or in the interim. And all the markets I've been in fit that description. And then they're in states like Colorado, Florida that have been growing. So now fast forward decades later, they are growing and being built out. So now the time was right for building houses and or just buying and selling the land to other people who want to build houses. So those are the types of areas I look for. And again, you can make a lot of money just flipping raw land. I know people who do that or recreational land. So it's certainly not the only way to go. It's just what I know and what has worked very, very well for me. So that's step one, identifying the market. And that's the type of land I like to go after because beyond everything I just went through, it's just simpler. So due diligence, once you know your market, I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say it's a minute or two because the utility situation, the zoning, the topography is the same for thousands of lots. And so you just need to quickly check title, back taxes, that sort of thing. And it just makes the whole process easier and then also offloading it easier. My single acquisitions manager handles 5 to 10 lots a month and the transaction coordination on all of them and part of the dispo on it. Most of them I list with realtors, but she'll sometimes do dispo as well. And she does that part-time. So again, another thing about land that I like is it's so simple, and especially the land that I'm doing, that it's much, much easier and just takes less time to make the business run. So that's the land I stick with. And as far as process, I started with land offer letters. So they're simple mailers that have a purchase agreement, a one-page purchase agreement. They say, oh, hey, JD, Melissa, we see you own such and such property. If interested in selling, we'll buy at X price. And it's literally a purchase contract that they can sign. And I have forwarded that to the title company and used that to close. So very, very simple. Now, as time has gone on and I've worked to get more and more and more out of the same markets, I've switched that up. I've done postcards with offer prices. I've done handwritten mailers from a different company. Now I've got cold calling going. So there's been an evolution, but it just started with those simple mailers. And it's such a different demographic with land. I rarely deal with desperate sellers. In fact, we really never do, because land, you can't, well, you can, but getting financing is far less common. So usually these are people who bought the lots via cash 10, 20, 30 years ago. They were going to move here and build. And for whatever reason, life got in the way and they bought it at $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. It's just been really, or become a sunk cost in their mind. And so a lot of times it's wealthy older people that are selling us these lots and they just don't want to deal with it. And so if all they need to do is sign when a notary shows up, they're happy to sell at a discount because they're not in need generally, and they just don't want to deal with it. So it's a really interesting niche for those reasons. So anyways, that's the mail pieces I've been using. Again, if you're going to try and start this, I really recommend starting with one thing and then adding on once your KPIs are clear and you're already getting results from that one marketing channel. Build off of that. Don't do, a little bit of cold calling and then a couple texts and then a few mailers. No. One thing. Figure out how to be successful. And then when you have a market that's producing, okay, and you want to double down, then it makes sense to move to different marketing channels, as I have done. But then from there, you can assign, especially if you're getting started. Let's say you don't have a lot of money, then assignment is probably a better route to go. But I've probably, only assigned less than 10 deals. So the vast majority of them we've closed on so that we can build or sell on notes if need be. But just an important note there, if you need to, you can assign the contract. So for Dispo, it really depends on your market, because you need to know who's your avatar. Who are you selling to, right? If you're in my markets, you're going to sell to the end user who wants to build for themselves, or the small mom and pop builder that wants to put a spec or just have it in their inventory for one of those clients that's going to come along. And so for them, it's a mix, right? Sometimes we list on the market, there's certain sections of town that really appeal to the end user because they have just killer views, but are harder to actually build out. So those ones tend to go on market. And then there's a certain section of town that it's much easier to build, flat, super simple, but not quite as desirable. So those ones we tend to have my acquisitions manager just call through all of our builders in our CRM and sell it to them. And so that's really it. It's a super simple business model as far as, do we build, flip, whatever, that depends. So, for example, one of the builds I'm doing right now, we got the lot the week that a developer who was doing a much larger project surrounding it was repaving the road, redoing all the curb and gutter, making it very nice. Plus there was nice new houses going up around it. So I said, okay, great opportunity to go build a new house there. So that one we kept. I got a lot for $1,000 on the golf course in Colorado City. So built on that one because that was just a killer deal. So it really what I'm looking for as far as deciding to build, I want it to be completely flat. Again, all utilities in place. There's certain sections of town notorious for having terrible soil conditions, which until you excavate it is really hard to know, but you still have an idea. So avoiding those. And then just, is it a desirable location? I like to have several builds going at all times. And then as far as cash versus terms, at this point, it's more of just what comes up as far as buyers. I mean, generally, I would be more okay going the route of financing it if it's just taking time to sell, but that really hasn't happened much. But you can get such high interest rates. I mean, we sold a couple last month that were at 12% interest. So yeah.
Awesome.
So let me ask you a couple of questions, and you kind of did hit on it, but I guess my question is, one, do you have any rules of thumb or quick analysis that tells you what your offer price should be. Are you buying at 10% of the builder's after repair value or after build value? Or what does that look like to you? How do you know what your maximum allowable offer is?
That's a great question. Yeah. Okay. So I started at 30 cents on the dollar, and I was able to get some deals, but then again, the market was just getting hotter and hotter, and they were just flying off the shelf once on the market. And so I said, all right, we can go higher. And I've gotten up to about 40, 45 cents on the dollar with my land offer letter. And again, guys, really important caveat here. I talk to people who are trying to mail entire counties. And if you do that, you're dealing with a massive range in size and, zoning, utility situation. And so for that, you're going to need some sort of software that's doing a percentage of assessed value. I'm not doing that. If I pull a list on PropStream for the northwest section of town, all the lots are exactly the same with a 1% degree of variance there with strange hills or whatever. So yeah, I'm at about 40, 45 cents on the dollar with the offer letter. And really the test is assuming that it's a desirable area and lot. As long as there is a 10K net, I'm happy to do it. So we're sending out these land offer letters at around 14 to 15, and then selling most of them between 30 and 35. And there's transactional costs, and some of them are listed with realtors. And so most of the time make 12, 13 per deal. And that's the Colorado market I've had the most success in. As I told you, I'm expanding into Florida, and it looks like the margins are much larger there. So we'll see what comes of that, but I definitely don't have my numbers nailed down there yet.
Yeah, that's definitely the reason we came to Florida too.
Yeah,
just on the wholesale side, we're averaging 3,000 to 5,000, and our average fee now is significantly higher than that.
Good. Yeah.
So it's the same thing. I think though that $10,000 to $12,000 on a lot, especially since you have it systematized, right? Mm-hmm. Where you know what those offers are going to be going out. I think that's great. Now you did mention that you have an acquisition guy that works for you. You guys are doing over the phone closings, I assume, and not going out to view the property or meet the owners face to face. Can you tell us what your sales process on the buy side looks like?
Yeah, this is another reason I love land. So for the first 30 or 40 deals, I did it myself, which was longer than I should have. Guys hire quicker than that in hindsight. But anyways, I did quite a few myself. And so I can speak on the actual mechanics of it. A lot of this is transactional because it's not their home that they raise their kids in. It's some piece of dirt they bought 20 years ago and forgot about, or they inherited. And sure, you still get nasty calls from time to time, but not at all like you do with housing. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times, all they want to know is you're legitimate and you're not going to try and scam them. So I have her immediately send a frequently asked question, and then that has the contact info for our title agent on it. And I always just say, oh, JD, I can't scam you if I want. You call the title agent. They're the disinterested, the trusted third party that orchestrates the transaction. And then that immediately alleviates concerns, and rarely more is needed than that. Now, sometimes people are talkative and want to build rapport, but I'll tell you a lot of the transactions I did myself, and I'm seeing it's the same from an acquisitions manager. There isn't a lot of that rapport building that is necessary in houses or apartments or that sort of thing. It's more transactional and just making sure that they don't believe we're going to scam them. And then by that same token, the fact that we're building houses really helps because, they go on frontrangeland.com and they see pictures of houses with me talking in front of them, or my Facebook or Instagram and see pictures of the houses. So that really helps too. And it makes the sales process really easy. Now she is cold calling, and there's always more hesitation, it seems, from people when they get a cold call. But again, that frequently asked question plus putting them on the phone with the title agent really alleviates concerns quickly, because then they understand, hey, we're not trying to do this. They're not preparing the deed or having a sign or anything like that. We're going through a title company. So it makes it pretty darn easy.
I think that's a really good tip. That frequently asked question thing is something that can be used across any type of investing, especially if you're doing direct to seller marketing, or even if you're an agent. Those are really key things, and you create it once, but you can use it for every deal and update as necessary. I really like that.
Yeah. One other thought I had just talking sales process, something that has been just drilled in my head with 80 some of these deals is follow up. Now, to be clear, we're only talking about if they initiated contact with us or showed interest and then disappear, where I have my acquisitions manager do this. But let's say they call, leave a voicemail, they say they're interested, and then they disappear. I wrote a SOP for this. I don't have it in front of me, but the basic moral of it is you keep calling until they either sell it or tell you to go away. And we have gotten, a couple of the deals we've gotten recently, she had to follow up 30 plus times over the course of several months. And so follow-up is really important if they showed interest.
I think that's great. And that works, applies to other business models too. But one of the things that I think is specific to talk about with the land investing is, like you said, these aren't necessarily your motivated sellers. I almost think of them more as just bored sellers, right? They're tired of the property, but it doesn't, it costs a couple $100 a year for taxes. It's probably not that big of a deal. So they're not itching to come at you as much as some of these other about to go to foreclosure or tax lien and all that kind of stuff that we deal with a lot. So being in front of them when they are bored and have the time to take your call and go through the process, I think is probably super key. And that's where that 30 follow-ups, because they're not going to make extra time to talk to you if there's not a problem. They're not motivated to do that. So you got to find the time in their day where you fit into their conversation.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a good way of putting it. We do go after the tax lien list, and we've gotten a lot of good deals that way. But it's still, a lot of times they have a number of months until they're going to lose it by when we're talking to them. So it's still not super pressing most of the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think you have a ton of information that you've been able to provide. If people in our audience wanted to see what you're doing, find out more about you, and really join into your network, where would you send them, or what should we tell them to do?
Yeah, Facebook or Instagram, Dan Haberkost. You'll see a mix of the mountains and then projects I'm doing. And then I create a website, danhaberkost.com, just kind of detailing different projects I'm working on and the thought process behind them.
Awesome, Dan. Well,
that was very cool.
We really appreciate
you
coming on the show today. I think that so much of your thought process translates into every aspect of direct to seller marketing, but specifically for the land investing. I know that there's two difference, raw land and infill land, but it just makes a lot of sense to go after the infill. They're so much easier to comp. You got in the area as opposed to trying to comp an 11 acre with a mountain and a waterfall. Like that's way different than just, it's a 1/4 acre lot in this subdivision. Yeah, I really like that idea. So awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one more thought just on the marketing and sales, you got to know who your avatar is, both on the acquisitions and dispo side. So for me, knowing that most of the people who are going to be selling land are older, I'm not texting. We're not texting. And I know there's laws around that. Let's just forget about that for a second because I'm not educated there. But your marketing needs to fit your avatar. So you need to know who your avatar is. If you're going after a product where in your neighborhood or market, it's all millennials that own the houses, well, maybe texting makes a lot more sense, right? I never answer a phone call. I'm a millennial that I don't know the number. I hate answering the phone, right? So make sure you know your avatar and then meet them where they're at with your marketing.
Sure. That's a wonderful point. Awesome. Well, we'll let you know how our land endeavors go forward. And we really do appreciate your time today.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Melissa, JD, this is fun.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com. Or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.